It feels like every other week some major pastor is exposed for having child pornography or for, having inappropriate relationships with young girls. It's
Yeah.
every week. It really does feel like it's
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
And that just makes me so angry that these people are continuing to supposedly serve in the name of God, and
Yeah.
yet they're abusing women and children.
Dorothy Greco is an author, writer, and photographer
whose work helps people build honest, grace-filled relationships.
Because I think it's too easy for people to say, I don't hate women, I'm married to a woman, or I love my sister. Well, then I don't have to deal with misogyny because I'm a guy and I don't have to think about it. So if I think for so many women, we have just internalized misogyny. It's the air that we breathe. In order to exist and not be crushed by it, we kind of have to ignore it. But misogyny also really harms men as well. Boys are told not to cry. Boys are called sissies if they cry. Boys are called sissies if they do things that are considered feminine because the feminine is bad.
What did you write?
It was about 7 or 8 years ago I had the idea.
Hello and welcome to Three Questions, the series where I get together with somebody who has written something that you need to read. I am here with my good friend and mentor, Dorothy Greco, who is a prolific author and a very accomplished person. Thank you for being here with me today, Dorothy.
I'm very happy to be having this conversation with you, Pierce. I wish we could be in the
Absolutely.
same room.
I agree. I agree. I miss you. So, for those who don't know, Dorothy is an editor on the Van Dunk Edits team, and she and I go back. How long have we known each other? More than a decade at this point.
It's been a
Um,
while, yeah.
yeah, and miss you. Miss living near you. Since we moved away, we haven't gotten to be in person together as much. But I love getting together for whether it be virtually for stuff like this.
Yes, we missed you all too.
Absolutely. So I have a few questions for you, Dorothy, because I had the privilege of getting a sneak preview of the book that we are here to talk about today. For the Love of Women, Uprooting and Healing Misogyny in America. And I would love to ask you three questions about this incredible book and get a little bit of insight from you on what went into writing it and what people will get out of it when they pick it up. So my first question for you is, who are you, Dorothy?
When I read that question, Pierce, I thought, oh my gosh, he's starting with an existential question that will plunge me into the depths of despair, given that I just turned 65 yesterday. So I'll try to keep it light. Um, I have worked as a photographer and a journalist since 1985. So that's been a long time, 40 years in that career, mostly taking photographs, doing some journalism work, but mostly taking photographs. And then I think it was 15 or 16 years ago, I began to transition into writing more. And Pierce said that I'm a prolific author. I don't know that I agree with that, given that I have many friends my age who have written like 12, 15 books. But I got started really late. I wrote my first book when I was 57, so I have a lot of catching up to do. I'm a mom. We have three grown sons, uh, all out of the house. We have two grandchildren, and I've been married for 34 years to the same guy, Christopher. Let's see what else. I guess I consider myself, in terms of how I write, that I'm a journalist with a pastor's heart.
Mm,
So I'm not simply about dispensing information or linking things together or making discoveries. Like, I want to do that. That's really important to me. But I also care deeply about um, the state of my reader's soul and their spiritual
mm,
life. So I think that I bring that dimension into not just my books, but also my Substacks and my other articles.
yeah.
And then I would say the other component, the more social, less work component, is I love biking. I love kayaking. I love being out in nature. Nature is really my cathedral. That's the place where I connect best with God. Um, the other thing that I love doing is making good food and sharing it with friends.
hmm And I have been a beneficiary of the good food and the pastor's heart. And both your pastor's heart really comes across not just in what you write, but also in the way that you are with people. You can see it
Mm,
in what you write, but when you sit down with people, it comes across very clearly. And I have sat down with you so many times and really benefited from being your friend.
thank
So
you.
Thank
That's
you for who
kind.
you are. Absolutely. So I'd love to now ask, what did you write? What is this book that people can pre-order right now as soon as they see this?
What is this book? Such a big question. It was about 7 or 8 years ago, I had the idea of writing a book on misogyny, and I approached my agent at the time and said, "Hey, this is something that I feel like I have very strong thoughts about. I've had so many personal experiences with misogyny, and I'd like to write a book on it." And her response was, "I don't think anybody would be interested in that." That was 2 or 3 months before Me Too.
Mm,
So, mistake
hmm
that I listened to her. I should have gone with my gut and said, "No,
That's
I
right.
really think this is a good book to write." So it's been percolating in my mind for a long time. By the time the Me Too, Church Too thing really came to the forefront, I was already under contract to write my next marriage book, Marriage in the Middle. So I had to put this project on hold. But literally, I felt like as soon as Marriage in the Middle was done and handed in, I began to think more strategically about this book. So, as the title indicates, For the Love of Women, that to me is the antithesis of the hatred of women, which is the working definition of misogyny. I define it much in a much broader way because I think it's too easy for people to say, "Well, I don't hate women. I'm married to a woman," or "I
Yeah.
love my sister." And
Mhm.
then, well, then I don't have to deal with misogyny because I'm a guy and I don't have to think about it. And then through the book, I talk about how does misogyny show up in 6 specific places in the United States: healthcare, the workplace, the government, media and entertainment, personal relationships, and the church. Those are the places where I do a really deep dive. And then the last 2 chapters are on healing. What does it look like to heal from misogyny? And how can we, as a culture, as a church, as a people, as a married couple, how can we chart a new path forward? Like, what would it look like to engage our imaginations in such a way that we could diminish and even, yay, hopefully eradicate misogyny?
Absolutely. And you talked about how you define misogyny. The way that you go about really setting boundaries around the issue and identifying the scope of, all right, this is what we're talking about, as well as how you tackle that issue, is really it's incisive and it's hopeful. The way
Mm,
that you go beyond the not quote unquote traditional idea of, we hate women and we want to hurt them. No, it's more and it's deeper than that, and it is ingrained in how our society is set up and how our
yes.
families and churches and institutions are set up. And to notice how that's happening is absolutely the first step in addressing it. And you go beyond just noticing it and pointing it out, but you really dive deep into research. You dive deep
Mhm.
into personal stories of well-known people and just anecdotes from people you know,
Yeah.
and really dive deep into some really convicting and some really powerful points that you make. So I've been bettered myself by reading it.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, and as you reference, it's very research heavy. So I have about 500 footnotes, but it's not at all an academic read. I couldn't write an academic book if I absolutely had to. I find often, not always, but I often find them very dry. Um, this, I think, is very engaging. It's written as a journalistic expose to some extent, where I'm saying like it's here and it's here and it's also here.
Yeah,
And once you get through the book, I don't think that you could say misogyny is a thing of the past, like
yeah,
we're
yeah,
beyond that now. In many
yeah,
ways, it is similar to racism, where just because there are gains that have been made, there are laws that have been changed, doesn't mean that we have eradicated racism. And we see both misogyny and racism like full force right now
yeah,
in our country. There's no denying that both of
yeah.
them exist.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you noted how it doesn't read like an academic read. I can
Mhm.
attest. It, you back up everything that you say with research, but that's not the foremost. Like you're not getting hit over the head with footnote after footnote or study after study. That's supporting a very
Right.
clear and very narratively flowy point that you're making. So it comes across really clear.
Flowy. I
Anybody,
like that, Pierce. Flowy.
absolutely. Anybody who picks up this book is going to see it. It flows.
Right. We learn and we are moved by stories. And if it's
Yeah.
simply data, if it's simply facts, I don't think that that moves people as well, which is
Right.
part of why it felt really, really important to bring people's stories in. So every single chapter starts with a story. And then throughout each chapter, there are often other personal narratives from folks.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring your own story in at various points in a really vulnerable and really powerful way.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like I had to. Like I can't expect other
Yeah.
people to be doing it if I'm not doing it too. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you have a favorite part of the issue of misogyny can be so heavy, but you really infused hope throughout your entire book. Did you have a favorite or a most fun part of researching or writing the book?
I'm not sure if fun would be the word that I would use, Pierce. Yeah, I was angry a lot, as my husband will attest. I'm reading the stories and doing the research and thinking like, I'm right. I wasn't making this up. This is real. So there was a sense of validation that I got for my own story and my own experiences, which is I'm hopeful that I'm passing that off to other women. That was one of the main reasons I wanted to write the book, is to say to other women, you're not making this up.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
have really experienced some pretty horrific and difficult and painful things, and I want to name them
yeah,
so that you can identify them. I think one of the things that super interesting to me, I've been making videos of women with have been willing to share their stories with me, and oftentimes when I first reach out to them and say, "Hey, I know a little of your story. Would you be willing to talk with me?" Their response is, "Well, I don't think I've experienced misogyny." And then I'm
mm-hmm,
able to say, "Well, what about this? And what
mm-hmm,
about that time when?" And then, there's this moment where they think, "Oh,
uh-huh,
oh, you're right." So if I think for so many women, we have just internalized misogyny. It's the air that we breathe. That's actually the title of the first chapter in the book. It's so much a part of the fabric of our culture that in order to exist and not be crushed by it, we kind of have to ignore it.
yeah,
And what I'm hoping that this book does is to say, no, let's not ignore it anymore. Let's talk about it.
yeah,
So in
yeah,
terms of what energized me, I think that's probably a better word for me to use in terms of what I was writing. The chapter on the church is where I had the most fire in my belly,
yeah,
because I feel like the church is the one place where we should not be seeing any misogyny. Like it
yeah,
should just be gone. And
yeah,
instead, if you pay attention to the news, it feels like every other week some major pastor is exposed for having child pornography or for, um, having inappropriate relationships with young girls. It's
yeah,
every week. It really does feel like it's
yeah,
every
yeah,
week, and that just makes me so angry that these people are continuing to supposedly serve in the name of God, and
yeah,
yet they're abusing women and children. Like that
yeah,
just is
yeah.
enraging to me. So the most fire was that chapter, and you will notice that when you're reading it. I think the most enjoyable chapter for me to write was the final one, when I was able
Mhm.
to sit down and really synthesize all of the things that I had been, all the threads, pull them all together, and having conversations with several people who I think are really deep thinkers. Karen Swallow Prior, I talked with her about what does it mean? What does the social imaginary mean? And how can we as a culture begin to imagine something better? That was a really fruitful and helpful conversation for me that's included in the book. The pastor David Swanson out in the Chicago area, who also is very much sort of on the forefront of trying to break down misogynistic barriers in his church for women. So those kind of things to me gave me hope. Like, even though at this
Mhm.
point, I don't know that I believe that I'll see a major change before I pass away, given my age, but I feel a greater sense of hope that my grandchildren will. And that to me was surprising. Like, I didn't expect that
Hmm.
that's where I would end.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to double back to that fire in your belly with the church and how so much misogyny has characterized how we engage with the world as the church, and as somebody with a vocational ministry background, I'm so glad that that fire in your belly is coming out in this book. And
Mm.
really, I would love to see a lot of men pick up this book, and in the same way that women who have experienced misogyny and can see themselves and their stories and in this book and feel validated. I think a lot of men who, whether knowingly or unknowingly, have participated in misogyny at whatever level,
Mhm.
can realize, oh, there is so much room for not only for me to do better, but for me to be encouraging my brothers to do better and
Right.
to move toward that hopeful vision that you talk about in that last chapter.
Yeah, in the last chapter, I talk about men becoming allies, advocates, and interrupters. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, women have been fighting against misogyny for a long time. And obviously, there have been some men, but there's not enough men. Like, we
Yeah.
really do need men to come alongside of us and to say, you know what? Even though I'm not necessarily as affected by misogyny as you are as a woman, I'm going to take up your cause. I am going to
Yeah.
speak out for you. I am going to support you. I'm going to make sure that the ways that you experience misogyny when you're in my workplace or when you're in my church, stop. Like, that's what we need. And I think you're absolutely right that I'm hopeful that men will read it, but it potentially will make them feel quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes that discomfort is exactly what we need to be spurred into action to move forward.
Right. It's the
Absolutely.
what will the men do with the discomfort? Because they can go
Yep,
to
yep,
shame and anger and then
yeah,
say, I'm done with this. I don't want to have this conversation. Or they can feel that sense of discomfort and allow that to lead to conviction. And,
yeah,
that's my hope.
absolutely. We've already kind of touched on this a bit, but why should people read your book?
I think because misogyny harms all of us. It doesn't
Mhm.
just harm women who are marginalized, women who are poor, women who maybe aren't in your demographic, but it harms all of us. The very first chapter, I talk about the ways that misogyny hurts women, it disadvantages us, there's violence against our bodies that we have to deal with, which causes trauma. Many of the things for women are probably more obvious, like, yeah, of course, I know that. But misogyny also really harms men as well. One of the things that I discuss is the fact that in our culture, which is really elevates strength, it elevates individualism, it elevates success in the material world. And part of the result of that is that men are not allowed to feel fully. Like, you can be angry as a man, that's cool. But if you shed tears, in a public setting, I think about one of the examples I told is Jimmy Kimmel when the fires happened in LA, which was what, maybe a year ago now, maybe
Mhm.
I don't remember exactly when. I think it was almost a year ago. When he talked about it on his show one night, he wept. Like, he was so moved. And then there was I won't say who, but somebody who's in the media who really just shredded him. Said you essentially, like, you're a wimp, and if you
Mhm.
can't get up there and just talk about something without crying, then you shouldn't even be on the show. And that is just it's such a pervasive communication to men, right? And it's not just to men, it's to boys. Boys are told not to cry. Boys are called sissies if they cry. Boys are called sissies if they do things that are considered feminine because the feminine is bad. So there's so many ways that it just stunts us. It makes us less of who we're meant to be. And whether it's the systems that need to change or the individuals that need to change, I think if we could imagine, again, a culture where all of us were seen as equals, where there weren't gender hierarchies, where there weren't such rigid gender stereotypes in terms of what can you do as a boy, what can you do as a girl, there would be so much more freedom.
Mhm.
Really, like, it would just be
Mhm.
so much of a freer culture and less constraints that aren't even biblical constraints. Like, there's none of these things can be backed up by the scripture. It's just cultural, and
Yeah,
it's what makes us feel comfortable. And so we
yeah.
have to get out of our comfort zone and be willing to say, what will it take for me to live in a house, for me to live to work in a church, for me to live in a culture where women are fully esteemed, fully respected, fully protected, and where men and women can mutually flourish in partnerships. Like, wow, wouldn't that be amazing? Right?
Absolutely,
So I
absolutely.
think that that's what the book is pointing us toward, is to say, yes, this can feel like a lofty, maybe even unattainable vision, but I think if we care enough And if we have these kind of honest dialogues where we're saying, okay, I'm willing to do the work. I, as a man, am willing to take some heat in my office place for saying, you know what, we're not going to make those stupid sexist jokes anymore.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
shutting it down and I'm
Yeah.
not going to tolerate it anymore. Those kind of little things, build upon each other and really make a huge difference.
Absolutely. That's the kind of vision I want to work for. That's
Yeah.
the kind of vision that this this book is not only pointing towards, but can manifest in people's lives should they pick it up and not only read it, but embody what you're speaking about.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. For the love of women, uprooting and healing misogyny in America. Where can people find your work, Dorothy?
If you go to my website, which is dorothygrecco.com, Greco with one C, you can sign up for Substack. You get all the well, maybe not all, but some of the other extraneous posts where I have written articles. I'm not always great about keeping up with that. The book, you can pre-order the book from there, and there's pre-order bonuses if you scroll down on that page. The book is available at any place where books are sold. I try not to advocate for people to use Amazon, but you can find it on Amazon as well as ask your local bookseller to get it for you.
All the links to find the book and Dorothy's work are going to be available in the description of this video. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Dorothy.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me on.